The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another week of Fantasy NBA Today. I am your host, Dan Besbris. This is a Hoop Ball presentation, and we can rumble right on into the good stuff. Coming up this week on Fantasy NBA Today, you're stuck with me today, and that's it this week. That's right, you've only got one Dan solo show, which means only one time I will subject you to severe betting information. And I do have a little bit of a mea culpa on that thing. I had the wrong number for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Rick, thank you for pointing that out to me. I had them listed at 47.5. That was last year's number. 44.5 is this season's number for the Minnesota Timberwolves, so I will be refreshing that analysis on today's show. We left off at the New Orleans Pelicans on our Wednesday show from last week, so we'll pick up after the Timberwolves. We'll jump straight to the New York Knicks, likely do the Thunder, the Magic, the Sixers, and hopefully the Phoenix Suns as well. And then my hope is that we can probably get through it in one more additional show. In my mind, I didn't think it was going to take this long. I don't know why I didn't think it was going to take this long. It took me a long time to write all this stuff down. Anyway, it's for the best. We're almost into September now. It's August 27th. Once we get into September, you guys aren't going to want to hear about sports betting, at least until after the season begins, right? That's when we'll get into the day-to-day stuff. And this is a lot of time to spend on season win totals, but it's an important one. And to me, it's actually one of the easiest things you can wager in the NBA. Yes, there's a long outlay. Your money is out of your hands for a very long time, but it's not that crazy. Like, if you were betting... Okay, so we're not a great example, this particular podcast, because I think we only placed like a total of about 60 suggested wagers during the NBA season last year. 30 teams, 82 games apiece, cut that in half. So 82 times 15, that's about 1,300, I think. There's about 1,300 NBA games every year, and we bet like 60 of them. That's a pretty small percentage. And we hit a very high percentage of them, 60-something%. Now, if you're doing this long-term, by all accounts, the best you're probably going to do, ultra long-term, is like 54%, and you're a millionaire. I guess you have to start with enough money. In terms of season win totals, because there are so few of them, because they happen so rarely, it's actually not as crazy to expect a higher percentage. So you can actually win money at a better clip. Obviously, it won't be total quantity as much, because the most you could possibly play is 30 different wagers. But it is... So like last year, we went 19-11 on these things, and it's not insane to think that you could hit over 60% of them long-term. Okay, but anyway, that's off the regular track. I wanted to tell you guys what's coming up on this week's podcast. Pretty excited about it. Talking to Adrian Benjamins on tomorrow's podcast. As usual, the Tuesday show will be myself and Adrian. We'll talk about some more information on Dynasty Leagues. It'll be Dynasty 103, right? We did Dynasty 101 2 weeks ago, Dynasty 102. These are all upper division courses, by the way. Wednesday, excited to welcome Zach Feldman, one of Hoop Ball's writers, to the podcast. We'll be having our first commiseration. I'm inclined to bug him about analytics, although we'll see if that's the right time for it. Zach is a big-time numbers guy. It's going to be kind of a new breed, actually, here on Fantasy NBA Today. So I'll be picking his brain. I'll be learning some stuff with Zach right along with you guys. He's also big into dynasty leagues. He's big into gambling. He's a degenerate, so it feels like a pretty good fit. Thursday, as usual, will be Neil and myself, and then Friday, Adrian and Neil will wrap up the show. We don't have a plan exactly for what's coming up on every one of those episodes, but things are happening, man. Things are happening, and the biggest thing that's happening right now is the Hoop Ball Draft Guide is out. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hoop Ball Draft Guide is officially live. It was $11.99 over the weekend. I believe that price goes up to $13.99 today. So we'll just talk about that, which is still $4 off The full price, which I believe will be coming soon, so you're going to want to get it at $13.99. Guys, I don't like to say 99 a lot of times, so I'm going to round up a penny. I know that's bad marketing, but it's $14 now. If you are a repeat subscriber to the Draft Guide, you get a $2 coupon off, so that 14 becomes 12. And I believe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe that you can also combine the Draft Guide with the Season Pass and get that at a discount as well. But the real key here that we're promoting in particular, and I'll fill in the details on the other stuff if I do a better job of looking them up, is the Draft Guide exists. It is real. It is live. It can be in your hands. It has a crazy number of things in it. A ridiculous number of things. Over 400 player profiles. Why would you even need that many? Projections, rankings, interaction with the pros. Yes, you'll get chats and video interaction. That's later on in this offseason. You got all the projections sorted into positions: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forwards, centers. You got team previews, depth charts, minute projections, schedule grids. Both the weekly and daily schedule grid. So if you're plotting your weeks way out in advance, or if you want to stream, that's all going to be available in the Draft Guide. You'll get early access. You can, get early access to the Brewski 150. The Draft Guide subscribers get the B150 on October 1. That's included. We'll be doing mock drafts together starting September 15th. Live shows starting after mid-September. It is a whopper. I mean, it is huge. It is almost overwhelmingly huge. But I know that, so here's the thing. I don't think I could handle that much information personally, but I know a lot of you guys love that much information. I did a podcast last year. One of the episodes of Fantasy NBA Today was about trying to limit the different sources of intake. So if hoopball is one of your sources, this is the maximum amount of hoopball. I just found it difficult. A couple of years ago, I was doing this podcast and talking to a lot of hoopball experts, and I talked to Roto-World experts, and I talked to Basketball Monster experts and hashtag basketball. The list goes on and on and on. And so by the time I got to my own draft, I couldn't remember what I thought and what I had just heard from other people. My own stuff got all jumbled up. And I do things a little bit differently than your average NBA projections guy. So that was difficult. But this, to me, this is a great way to just get all of your hoopball information. If you absolutely positively must compare it to someone else, you can. I just think that actually makes life harder. You end up getting competing recommendations on things, and how do you make calls in those moments? My favorite thing that you'll get in the Draft Guide, and it's not out yet because it's too early for it, is the ADP assessments. Panda, Mike Passador, we call him Panda, who, by the way, won 30 deep last year. So in his rookie season, he beat everybody. Puts together these crazy awesome ADP trackers that watches the average draft position of everybody in, I think it's the top 150, where they're going. That's so huge, particularly for the way that I set up my draft prep. I could go on just that, and then I know where I need to take guys. Everybody gets so obsessed with what the projections are for particular dudes, but let's be honest here. The key is drafting guys lower than where they end up. You want dudes that are values. That's how you succeed in a fantasy NBA draft. It's not just always getting your guys wherever you might have to grab them. At a certain point, certain dudes lose their value. Right? Anthony Davis is clearly the number one guy, but is it a value at number one? Not really, because there's nowhere to go but down. A lot of people are talking about how much they love John Collins this year, and he should have a very good season. But if he's getting drafted in the 30s, that could really legitimately be happening by October this year. Then there's no value left there. Because it's not about just getting the guy you want. It's about getting the guy that's of value. You might end up with a team of guys you didn't expect to have, but if you get them later than where they're going to end up, you're probably going to win. In fact, if you did that with every single player on your whole team, I could almost guarantee you will win. You win money. Maybe you won't win the league. Can't talk about injuries and stuff. In any event, that is the Hoop Ball Draft Guide. You can acquire it by going to hoop-ball.com and clicking on Draft Guide. It's pretty easy. It's the lead story, basically everywhere. Or follow at Hoopball Tweets or at Hoopball Fantasy. You can follow me at Dan Besbris on Twitter. It's going to be everywhere. We're going to be jamming it down your throats like you could not possibly imagine for the next couple of weeks. And I know a lot of you guys love the free stuff. And that is, by the way, super cool. Because I had a Twitter interaction with... I already forget who it was. I'd like to give him a shout out because I really wanted to convey to him, and so I'll just convey it to all of you. We do not harbor any ill will if you don't purchase our premium stuff. We will never stop doing all the free goodies. This podcast will always be free. All of our other stuff that has been will continue to be. I mean, that's the name of the game. We want you guys as loyal Hoop Ball readers and listeners. Yes, the draft guide, the season pass, stuff like that, it sort of powers the locomotive. We have to have these options available. They are for the crazy people. And if you're not one of those crazy people, we don't blame you. It's okay. Just keep on listening and reading, and we'll love you forever. Okay, you guys have dealt with me hammering that stuff down your throat. Let's talk sports betting today. Outstanding. Okay. As I mentioned just a few moments ago on the podcast, we put out a Minnesota Timberwolves breakdown on Wednesday of last week that was nonsense because it was based on the wrong number. When it was 47.5, I really did enjoy the under for Minnesota. I thought that injuries were going to crush them. I thought that guys like Jimmy Butler, who have been playing under Tibbs for way too long, had almost no chance of making it through the year. I thought Cat, who's been playing 82 games, he's played every single game, by the way, of his 3-year NBA career so far. He's due to miss a few games. Wiggins is due to miss a few games. I don't really like Jeff Teague in this team, and he also tends to miss a few games here and there. Taj Gibson is going to miss some time. I like the Anthony Tolliver signing. I gave them credit for that, right? But I don't think that was going to be enough to get them back where they were when they were healthy. I also feel like Jimmy Butler might start looking ahead a little bit, and he was the engine that powered this team. Well, how do I feel now that the line, I'd not say it's been adjusted 3 points down, but it's been corrected in my own notes, 3 wins down. The key here is that I still think this team is going to be badly injured. So I still very, very gently lean to the under. I mean, before where, if I was leaned 60% of the way to just falling in that direction, this is like a 5 to 10% lean. This is a very weak one. I just get the feeling that because of the injuries, because Jimmy Butler is that engine, the guy that fires them up, he's their winner. When he missed time, the whole thing came apart. I get the feeling that they're tired of the Tibbs act. They're tired of him wearing him out. They're tired of him grinding on him. The young guys don't really understand what it's going to take to win. They needed to make improvements, and it isn't happening. Now, here's the thing. If guys stay healthy-ish, if Jimmy Butler gets into the thick of the season and that drive takes over, he's like, you know what, screw it. I know I'm not going to be here next year, but I'm going to do what I can. We're going to win, damn it. Then there's a very reasonable chance that this thing goes over. I thought that they would probably end up in the 44-45 win territory, which is what I wrote when I thought the line was 47.5. Now that it's basically 44-45, well, that puts me in a little bit of a creek. So where I thought I had a pretty good under going before, now I have almost a number to me that's spot on. They're going to be toiling away, man. they're going to be toiling away. I don't think they got any better season over season. They were on pace to clear the number last year before the injury to Jimmy Butler. And I know a lot of people look at that and they're like, well, I mean, come on. They make it easily if they stay healthy. But I think that's a much bigger if, right? That wasn't so much an if as a when for these guys playing under Tibbs. This is what always happens. Derrick Rose is a shell. Luol Deng turned into a shell. Joakim Noah turned into a shell. Is Jimmy Butler right behind them? I hope not, but maybe. I mean, you might see guys go down a month into the year and then the whole thing's just cooked. So tiny lean to the under still, even adjusted down in my corrected notes now. Obviously not nearly as strong as before, where I thought I had 3 games of value. Now I have like half a game of value. But I still think it goes slightly in that direction. Not at all surprised, by the way, if this hits 45 or 46, which makes this a very, very small lean, barely even one. All right, let's get into the teams that we haven't talked about yet, and that's starting at the New York Knicks. The Knicks, under 29.5, and the way that I wrote this one out as I was kind of working through it was, do I even need to really change my write-up from last year? I believe I called them a train wreck, and they were actually playing okay. Kristaps Porzingis was excellent. Guys were kind of stepping up. Porzingis is not going to be 100%. He's going to miss time. There is a recovery issue where, I mean, usually that first year back from massive injuries like this, guys aren't quite where they need to be. I think there's a very, very small chance that he looks like himself, so maybe that happens, but I doubt it. There's plenty of fantasy value on the Knicks, especially with Porzingis out, but there isn't a guy that can push them to that next level. They're going to get off to a bad start without KP at full strength, and at a certain point, it becomes more important to be a part of that bottom 3. So it's not a full tank, right? Because the bottom 3 teams each have the same probability of getting the number 1 overall pick. It's a semi-tank. The Knicks are attempting to move veterans. We've heard they're trying to unload Courtney Lee. Enes Kanter opted back into a very lucrative deal. I'm sure they'd like to move him if at all possible. They have bad point guards or young point guards or young and bad point guards. They have Tim Hardaway Jr., who I think could be decent this year. They have Mario Hezonja, who I think could be decent from a fantasy perspective this year. Like I said, I think some guys on this team are going to put up solid numbers as they go into sort of a clunky, open, weird game where there isn't much winning. You need a guy that can go get you a bucket late if you're going to win games. So I still lean to the under with this club. I just don't see the progression, and I don't see the talent. The Knicks won 29 games exactly last year, and they were very good when Kristaps Porzingis, well, not very good, I guess, but they were ahead of that pace. There, is that better? Porzingis played 48 of the 82 games last year. He missed the final 34 of them. 23 points, almost 7 rebounds. He was putting together a very strong year. When he went down, things definitely devolved for the Knicks. And so they're going to be way up a creek again. It's not like they brought in some superstar that can turn things around. Their future is better served by just being terrible this year. One more year of being terrible, and then maybe seeing if health can all come together as they start to improve. I don't see the jump. The healing for Porzingis. I know he's a super young guy, so healing should be a little bit quicker, but it's not going to be that quick. It's just not. I mean, you're looking at what? What do you think? A few months? A few months of Porzingis? I think he's not supposed to be back until after the new year. Right? So in a best-case scenario, he plays like 40 games this season at somewhat strength. No, I'm going under. I think looking the other way, you're sort of overthinking it. I don't think the young guys make that big of a jump. I don't think the old guys can win without KP. So I still like the under. Knicks under 29.5. The Oklahoma City Thunder, the line is 50.5. That's a big number. And I'm going over. Same line as last year, by the way, 50.5. We took the under and won easily. I was hoping, and this is like story of my betting life, I was hoping that people would look at their 48 wins from last year, their embarrassing defeat at the hands of the Utah Jazz. They just got undressed in that playoff series, and that the line might be adjusted down a tiny bit. But unfortunately, there's so much superstar power and so much hype power that you're never going to get as much value on a team like the Thunder as you might want. But I actually think this team made a good step in the offseason. If this line was like 48.5, I'd be going totally bonkers. At 50.5, I still like it, but not bonkers like it. Obviously, to exceed 50.5, we're going to need Russell Westbrook and Paul George to stay healthy, which they have been the last couple of years, but, you never know what might happen. Beyond those two main pieces, I like the things the Thunder did this offseason. Removing Carmelo Anthony probably helps their win-loss number over the course of the year. I like Jeremy Grant getting a bigger role. He's not the offensive player that Carmelo Anthony is, but he is a vastly superior defensive player and a guy that's kind of coming along, at least in terms of finishing and trying to expand his range a little bit. I don't like Dennis Schroeder as a fantasy player, but he is a far better backup point guard than Raymond Felton. I believe Dennis Schroeder actually got some pretty high marks in some metrics this year, at least in terms of kind of passing and setting people up. He is a decent NBA player. He's an overrated fantasy player. I'm going to stick that in wherever I can, but he's a decent NBA player, and that gives the Thunder a little bit more punch if they're ever willing to take Russell Westbrook off the floor, right? When he's off the floor, things totally come apart because the offense is Russell Westbrook. I've talked about this before. He is their floor and he is their ceiling. Bringing in a guy like Dennis Schroeder, another guy that can handle the basketball and set up an offense. By the way, better than Paul George in terms of handling the ball and setting up a play. Paul George is a great NBA basketball player, but he's not the attacking guy that he might have been had his career taken kind of a different arc. He's a lot of outside shooting. Dennis Schroeder actually isn't much outside shooting, and in a weird way, I'm kind of okay with that. Andre Robertson is expected to be playing all year, although I think the last thing I read said he was not expected to be at full strength until closer to December, which is a little bit of a damper on what I thought was going on here. They brought in Nerlens Noel, who's another shot blocker, guy they can bring off the bench. They still have Patrick Patterson, not that he's necessarily going to do anything. They have Alex Abrines on that team still. What I like that they've done here is they've taken... I'm going to try to stay off my soapbox here for a minute because you guys have heard my Oklahoma City Thunder rants too many times at this point. The long and short of it is, I feel like because Billy Donovan is sort of a rudimentary offensive coach, and Russell Westbrook is entirely the offense. He's so dominant among the players on that team. Instead of trying to build a bunch of offensive guys around him, which they're always just going to get marginalized. We keep seeing it. They've built a defensive team around him to say, you know what, if we can't improve our scoring on a points per possession basis, we're going to try to really grind the other teams into a pulp because Paul George is awesome on defense. Andre Robertson is great on defense. Steven Adams, solid if unspectacular on defense. Jeremy Grant, better defensive player to slot in at the power forward spot. So they got a lot of guys. Dennis Schroeder, by the way, not that awful on defense. Not great, but not awful. So they have a team now that can slow down the opposition, and even though the offense is never going to change, although, yes, again, those 11 minutes that Westbrook is not on the floor, with Schroeder on it, they get better. That's a little thing, but it's a big thing. I think the Thunder make a step forward. I also think, and this is my last thought on Oklahoma City before we move on to the always exciting Orlando Magic, we have to look at narrative when we talk about season win totals. And the narrative for this Thunder team is that they got undressed last year. Everybody remembers them standing center court and Joe Ingles basically just pantsing the Thunder. He just walked up behind Paul George and took his trousers off. They are not going to be thrilled about that. These guys are a proud bunch of basketball players, just humans. Forget basketball players. Russell Westbrook is the angriest man in the NBA. Paul George, he likes playing under that weird Westbrook umbrella. They're going to be pissed this year. They want to win. They want more home games. They want more victories. They want to beat people. They want to show that there's something. So I believe that they put together a strong season. I think there's a chance they're actually the 2 seed in the West this year. There's your stupid hot take of the show. Orlando Magic, the number is 31.5. Oh, boy. How many games did the Magic win last year, guys? 25? 31.5? We got to get 7 more if we're going over with this one. Sorry, guys, I can't do it. Last year, we nailed the under. There was this weird world where we thought maybe they had sort of gotten better by subtraction, and that was sort of something, right? They moved Serge Ibaka, so that allowed Aaron Gordon to play more power forward. But here's the thing, and I can't help but wondering if I'm missing something massive with this Magic team, but I really don't think I am. Let's start with the narrative side of things. They're still super young, with the exception of Nick Vucevic. He's the old guy, and he's a candidate, by the way, to get moved at some point this year. Terrence Ross, I guess you could argue, has been around a little bit. Jonathan Simmons, they're still relatively young even around him. Is this a team that's really trying to make a leap yet? Let's say maybe. Okay, so that doesn't feed our storyline enough. Let's get into the actual nuts and bolts of it. Well, the Magic unloaded Elfrid Payton, so now DJ Augustine, by all accounts, is their starting point guard. He ain't getting you over the top. Aaron Gordon seems to be wildly injury-prone. I don't know that we can necessarily put that in stone yet. He's still a very young basketball player, and storylines can change. But at least as far as we've gone so far, Aaron Gordon played 57 games last year. 58 games last year. He played in 80 the year before that, 78 his sophomore season, and only 47 his rookie year. So which Aaron Gordon do we get? Was last year just kind of a snake-bit season? Was last year the Aaron Gordon that we're going to get going forward? A guy taking 6 3-pointers a game? A 23-year-old with his athletic ability who's 6'10", 230, that's just sitting out on the perimeter and firing away to the tune, by the way, of 17.5 points on 43.5% shooting. That is abysmal. And by the way, it's been a direct correlation for him with how many 3-pointers he's taken, or at least what percentage of his overall looks have been from downtown. His rookie year, he shot 44.7%, but he really didn't play much. His sophomore year, he played 24 minutes a game, shot 47% on 7.5 shots. 1.8 of those were from downtown. His 2-point percentage was 53%. His junior year in the NBA, which was not this most recent season, but the one before, he shot 53% from 2-point land, took 3.5 3-pointers, so that doubled, still shot 29% from downtown, and his overall field goal percent, as a result, ticked down from 47 to 45. This most recent season, he shot only 50% from 2. Maybe we could check some... I don't know. Maybe we could sort of check some of that up to him being injured, missing a few that he might have normally made. But he still took 9 2-pointers and 6 3-pointers. That's too many, guys. That's a 60-40 split. That's a 60-40 split. That's way too many. Way too many three-pointers. And so his overall shooting went down to 43.5. He's a very interesting fantasy player. He's a very interesting reality player, right? He averaged almost 18 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, just under a block, only 1.8 turnovers. We all look at Aaron Gordon, we're like, oh my God, the ceiling on this kid. The ceiling. But will he ever stay healthy, or is he doing... I mean, he's really going quickly down that Blake Griffin path. Stature-wise, they're not that dissimilar. Ability to leap, they both came in with that same note, and then all of a sudden, it's just chuck away from downtown. I know the modern NBA loves the three-pointer, but damn, dude, a dunk is a better shot than a three. A layup is a better shot than a three. Fine, don't take long twos. Move those a step farther back, but good gravy. Anyway, my annoyance with Aaron Gordon aside, you look at the rest of this team and they still don't scream winning to you. Vucevic is obviously a big key. Aaron Gordon is a big key. I don't know that they make the kind of leap that this number would indicate. So I still lean under for the Magic. I know that the narrative doesn't really point in either direction on this team, but I think that they need a little bit more development, right? Like guys like Jonathan Isaac, who could be really good in a couple of seasons. Mo Bamba could be really good in a couple of seasons. You know, another way to think about it, too, is that the Magic got off to a quick start last year, and they still only made it to 25 wins once reality set in. Maybe we're overthinking it. Maybe the line means more than we thought, but I lean under with the Magic. We'll call it a small lean to the under because there are some factors that worry me just a little bit. All right, I'd like to get through 2 more of these things, so indulge me if you will, and we'll try to keep them a little bit shorter. The Philadelphia 76ers, the number is 54.5. That's a whopper, friends. 54.5 is a whopper for a team, by the way, that won their last 16 games in a row last year and got to 52 wins as a result. It is pretty rare to win 16 games in a row in the NBA. And even with that, they didn't get to 55. My God. Sorry, guys. I'm hard on the under for this team. I believe that the Philadelphia 76ers have become a betting darling for those that are not fully ingrained in the NBA. Guys that love the Ben Simmons Rookie of the Year stuff, the Joel Embiid Future Hall of Famer stuff. I don't think there's a full understanding of how hard it is to make that kind of massive leap forward and then continue to leap forward the following year. This is a team that became super public, a team where we faded them throughout the entire postseason and just made truckloads of money because their number was crazy. And a team that has young superstars that get a ton of attention. All of that says this number is overinflated. A team that lost its general manager and lost out on all of the free agency stuff. They really didn't get anybody new. They traded for Wilson Chandler, which is fine. To me, he's sort of a league average kind of guy. He'll be okay out there. They still have Robert Covington. They still have J.J. Redick. Is this number so high because of an expectation that Markelle Fultz turns in a superstar year? To me, there's too much expectation and not enough things we've actually seen and can build upon. The Sixers are going to be a good team in the East. They're going to be a good team. But much like the Indiana Pacers, they were a team that took a flying leap forward last year and now are due to regress a tiny bit. Marco Bellinelli was massive for them down the stretch. Ersan Ilyasova was massive for them down the stretch. Massive. I mean, it's nuts how much those weird little mid-season pickups actually did for that team. Because, keep in mind, we talk about, health being a thing for the 76ers. It sort of felt like Joel Embiid played the entire season. He did not. He missed 19 games last year, and they won a lot of them. Without Ilyasova and Bellinelli, they don't win all those games. Does Dario Saric make another step forward? I doubt it. Ben Simmons might. I don't know if Joel Embiid does. Maybe. I mean, we're still going to be looking at him and wondering if he can actually stay healthy for a whole year. There's a value, obviously, to consistency. You know, the guys are back. The boys are back in town, so to speak. But this is too high. It's too high. It's very easy. There's sort of like a tipping point discussion to be had here. And again, I'm trying to keep this somewhat brief so that the pod doesn't go too long today. But there's a tipping point discussion where if you're right in the middle, and for the NBA, right in the middle is not a 50-50 team. A 500 team is actually slightly above the middle to me. If you're like in the mid-30s, it's very easy to swing a few games in either direction. It's very easy to go from 28 to 34 wins. It doesn't take a whole lot. You beat a couple of bad teams, and then you're there, right? You beat a couple teams that are worse than you. Think about it from that perspective. Okay, let me start that over. Now that as I was saying it, I thought this is a better way to describe it. Think about beating the teams that are worse than you. When you're up at the top, you've already beaten them. So where do the extra wins come? The extra wins, when you're one of the top teams in the NBA, come from beating the other top teams in the NBA. That's hard. That's really hard to do. So, like, you know, look at the 76ers from this last year, and I don't have their game-by-game sitting in front of me, so I don't know that I could tell you how every single one of their contests turned out. But go back through their games and tell me who were the losses to that could be easily fixed. And also tell me some of the wins that they could definitely get again. Right? Like, you have to correct a loss. You know, they lost to Indiana. Okay, they lost to Brooklyn at one point in there. You could turn that into a win. They lost to Oklahoma City. Is that an easy win? They beat San Antonio when they were beat up. It's very hard to add victories when you already have 52 under your belt. You know, the Golden State Warriors only won 58 games last year, and they're the best team we've seen in decades. 76ers put together a kind of season that deserved applause. They should be lauded for the year they had last season, but it's really hard to do that again and then also add victories to it. And you say, well, the East got weaker. Yeah, LeBron left the East, but you could also argue that some of the teams farther down in the East got a little bit tougher. Charlotte Hornets, to me, are going to be a tougher win this year. The Brooklyn Nets are a tougher win this year. I would even argue the dregs of the East might be a tougher win. Orlando, slightly tougher. Chicago, slightly tougher. So, yes, one of the top teams in the East got a lot softer, but a handful of the crummy teams in the East got a little bit tougher. Each. I think that balances out more than people realize. Sixers under, and I feel pretty strongly about it. Phoenix Suns, that's the last one we're going to do on today's podcast. The 29.5 is the line for the Phoenix Suns, a team, by the way, coming off 21 wins in one of the worst seasons I have ever seen. They were unwatchable. 29.5 is not that crazy of a number. When you look at it and you're like, okay, well, 21 wins last year, they'd have to go up 9 victories. But they only won 3 games after the All-Star break, and they only won 4 games from January 31st to the end of the year. And that's why we talk about it's actually a lot easier to swing games when you're terrible. Right? They could have very easily beaten Charlotte on March 10th. Let's look at some of the closer games. They could have beaten Orlando. They almost beat Houston. That's not a game they're going to win. Couple of tight ones to Charlotte. This is a team that was just getting blown out by other bad basketball teams. Fine. That's a check mark on the over side of the ledger. But there, to me, are more check marks on the underside of the ledger. Number 1, this team is built on chucking. We have not really seen that Devin Booker can lead a winning basketball team. That's a different discussion, by the way, than whether or not Devin Booker is good at basketball. He's good at basketball. He's a great shooter. Is he a great passer? Does he make good decisions on the floor? mean, he has a turnover problem, guys. If we're overlooking that, we're overlooking a big deal. He turned the ball over 3.6 times last year, 4.7 assists, 3.6 turnovers. That ain't doing it for me, guys. That's way too many turnovers for a guy who doesn't have 7+ assists. You got to be going 2-1 if you're the primary ball handler. He's also a guy, by the way, that's a high-volume 42.5% shooter over his career. Mind you, he takes 7 threes a game, but a lot of his shots are jump shots. So, it's not like he's going to be a pillar of efficiency. The guys around him, TJ Warren, who I kind of like. Dude shoots close to 50%, but he's a chucker. He doesn't know how to pass. Josh Jackson, he's prototypical chucker, doesn't know how to pass. Trevor Ariza, who they brought in to try to calm things down, is, I believe, a reasonable asset. A guy that I think it was a smart move to overpay just to get some culture into that Phoenix locker room. Try to teach these guys that if you want to actually try to win a basketball game, you have to trust one another a little bit. But trusting one another is different than actually making the right and good passes. They're young guys. They're all young, but the guys younger, the more recent draftees, are terrible or not there yet. One of those two. And then DeAndre Ayton, who might end up being a really interesting player even later on this same season. I believe it's going to take him some time to adjust to the NBA. You're going to see some foul trouble at the very least. I don't think the team can get to 30 wins. The West is way too stacked. I do think they take a step forward, but I think you're looking at like 26, 27, 28 wins kind of season. Like more what you saw last year from a good example of this. Kings, Bulls, Nets, teams like that, where they were competitive. Okay, Kings were maybe a little bit of a stretch there. They won some games they probably didn't deserve to win. But like Brooklyn, I think is a really good example. Brooklyn was competitive on almost a nightly basis. They played their butts off. They had a point guard in Spencer Dinwiddie. They made good decisions on the floor. That's the difference, by the way, between 22 and 28 wins. Just being in the game every night, you're going to fall into a victory. You're going to run into a team, even a decent team, that's going to go cold in the fourth quarter, and you're going to walk away with a win you shouldn't have had. One of the problems, obviously, for Phoenix is that they're still one of the worst teams in the NBA. Probably better than the Hawks? I'd say they're better than the Hawks. They're better than the Knicks without Porzingis, probably. But that might be it. Maybe the Kings. They might be better than the Kings this year. That's rough company, man. That's hard to get to 30 wins when there are only 3 teams that are, you could almost definitely argue, are worse than you. So they're going to have to pick off a lot of wins against teams that are better than them. And I don't believe that they have the fortitude yet to do it. It's a big year, though, for Phoenix. Make no mistake, this is a big season. They want to be competitive. I don't think they're going to be tanking. I think they need to prove to some of these guys that they're on the right path. And so maybe they luck their way into a couple of wins at the end of the year as well. But 27, 28, 29 wins, even 30 is a big threshold to get across. When you think about it from that perspective, it becomes much more obvious. The Lakers were the lowest win total team over 30, and they got to 35. They're a clear, big leap ahead of a team like the Phoenix Suns. You got to actually do something to get to 30. Between 30 and 42, there isn't a giant gap, right? There's the bottom tier that's 20 to 29. There's the middle tier that's about 30 to 42. And then you get into that upper tier where everybody's separated into little chunks. That, my good friends, is for another day. Let's put a pin in this thing. We got through the teams I wanted to get through. Our last one of these will be a week from today. We will do all of the remaining teams: the Blazers, the Kings, the Spurs, the Raptors, the Jazz, and the Wizards. I don't care what it takes. We're going to get through all 6 of those, and we're going to wrap it up. Again, draft guide is out, everybody. Go to hoop-ball.com and buy it. You'll be happy you did. We'll be thankful you did. Let us know when you do so, and we will thank you live on the Twitters. That is, of course, at Dan Besbris, at Hoopball Fantasy, at Hoopball Tweets. Again, tomorrow, Adrian Benjamins be on the pod. We'll be talking Dynasty. Zach Feldman on Wednesday. We'll be talking Dynasty, betting, analytics. Neil Rochlani Thursday, and then Neil and Adrian on Friday. That is your week coming up on Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoopball presentation. But that's okay. What's her face? What did we name her? Donna? I forgot. The British lady. She'll tell you that as soon as we're done anyway. So long, everybody. Have a great Monday.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.